Yo, what up, Russ here? And let's talk about this Nintendo Switch 2. So, as I'm sure you're all aware of, Nintendo had a direct exclusively talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, detailing all the system specs and the games that are coming out for the system. And to be honest, it was a pretty good presentation. They showed a lot of neat things in there. It wasn't boring, it was very entertaining all throughout. So that aspect is pretty cool. There are a couple of things though about this whole rollout that they've done that's kind of started to steer people the wrong way as more and more news has come out. I'm kind of wondering how I want to talk about this. I think I want to talk about just the direct first in itself and what we saw there, because that's the more positive end of this whole situation right now. Later on, I'll skip to the more negative information that's come out with this whole thing, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people really that's what they care to hear about. But before we get to that, let's talk about this direct. So this direct was like about an hour long, again showcasing the Switch, all of its hardware specifications, unique features, and a lot of games. There were a ton of games they showed in this thing. Honestly, if we went through them all, we would be here all day. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna mention a couple of them and we'll kind of just go from there. But first, let's talk about the hardware itself, or at least what they showed off in this thing. The big reveal here was what that new button was on the right Joy-Con. It's a C button, and that C button is what triggers what they call the all new game chat feature. So essentially, when you press that button, you'll jump into a giant Discord call or Zoom call or whatever kind of conference call, Microsoft Teams, with at least 3 of your friends. It seemed like they only had 4 people in a call at a time in the presentation. So I'm assuming that's probably the maximum. And it looks just like a fucking video call. You're all playing, you can all talk to each other, you can play games and share each other's screens if you want to, as well as there's an all new camera that they've made to where it'll allow you to show yourself, crop you in front of the gameplay, as well as there's gonna be some pretty unique integration with this camera. Mario Party Jamboree is one game that's kind of gonna be using this, as it will crop you into the game in different ways. Like there's bubbles that attach to your character whenever you're on the screen, as well as I think there's a few mini games that allow you yourself to be on screen and interact with the game itself. So that was actually pretty cool. And I also give him credit for kind of being just straight up honest with how this feature is going to look and run. Because in the presentation, when they do the screen sharing of the video game, that is running really rough. Honestly, like any other video call that you would have on a computer, like it's not really one-to-one. There is a lot of drop frames, and they showed that in this presentation. So while it's not the prettiest looking, at least they're not lying to you. So so you know what you're getting into. It is tied to Nintendo Switch Online. You need to have a membership for that, but they are letting you get by without it till March 31st of next year, 2026. You'll get to try it out for the better part of a year before you end up having to pay to continue the service. So that's really cool. And the fact that they added some legit game chat to Nintendo Switch, while it's very late, it's still a good thing. So give them praise where it needs to be. So yeah, that's what that button is for. So I guess C stands for the game chat button, conference call button, something. That was probably one of the bigger unknowns about this Switch. Some other things, 1080p screen, that's good. Of course, it's bigger in terms of width, but the depth of the system is still the same as a regular Switch. It's not any more chunky, it's just wider. It is 120 FPS, that screen, which shocked the hell out of me. I was not ready to see that. LCD screen, we kind of were hoping for OLED, but at the same time we weren't getting, or at least me personally, I wasn't getting my hopes up that it would be OLED. It is still kind of like a downgrade. If this is supposed to be the new better system, why doesn't it have all the new better toys and bells and whistles with it? But at the same time, it'd probably be a hell of expensive, and we'll get to that later. LCD, it does have HDR. They also got confirmation of the mouse control. We saw several games that use mouse control, but it works just like a mouse. Built-in mic with noise canceling, so it'll block out any surrounding sound and try to focus in and amplify your voice so others can hear you clearly. This kind of ties in with the conference call thing, or the game chat. They say it can work at a distance. We'll see how that works in real life. 3D audio is implemented in this thing as well. Again, just kind of catching up to what the other systems are doing. 2 USB ports. Again, we knew this. The thing that shocked me though was that the top USB port can actually be used for charging. I don't know why I didn't think it could be, but it didn't click until I saw them do it. And I was like, oh, well, damn, that's really, really helpful. So if you have it like propped up on a table and you need to charge it, you're not, you know, out of luck because you're blocking the bottom charging port. You can use the top one. So that was really cool. That was really clever. More storage this time around, so you won't have to get an SD card as quick. It's only 256 gigabytes of storage, which is good. It's good. It's a decent amount to at least get you started. Granted, I don't know how long that's going to last, and I don't really know how big Switch games are, so I can't really say whether or not that's enough to satisfy most people, or if they're really gonna have to quickly go out and get another card for upgraded storage. But tying into that, you can no longer use micro SD cards. They will not work with the Switch 2. You have to use micro SD Express cards with the Switch 2. Mainly has to deal with the higher reading and writing speeds for the Switch 2 that these cards are capable of and the regular ones aren't. Moving towards the dock will support 4K and HDR, which I didn't see coming either. We got to see a better 360 view of it, and it is it is a chunky boy, and that's because they put a fan in it. There is a fan in the dock that will help cool the system when it is docked. And when I saw that, I was just kind of dumbfounded, like, why the wasn't that in the Switch 1? Like, that just makes sense. And why wasn't it there? I could not believe that we didn't do that. I don't know. Maybe other people thought of it at the time, but I sure wasn't thinking anything about having a fan in the Switch dock until I saw that. You know, it'd be the simplest things. So yeah, that's about it as far as what was new with the hardware. And again, that was about 20-25% of this presentation. They did not spend long on this presentation at all talking to the hardware. The rest of this presentation was squarely focused on the games. Like, they really wanted to make sure that you knew what you were getting into when you were buying one of these things. The first thing they showed off was the new Mario Kart game that we had saw before. This one is called Mario Kart World, basically because it's essentially an open world Mario Kart. Think Mario Kart Horizon or Mario Kart Paradise, stuff like that. All the races take place on this big open world. You do have like designated tracks, but the thing is, after you finish one, you have to race to the next start line. Which is really cool. That's one of the modes, and there's a knockout mode where you have to again race to each checkpoint, and if you're in the back, you're knocked out. And as well as open world mode where you can just drive freely anywhere you want to go, and you can do it with, I don't know if it's like up to 4 friends or more, but you can drive around with friends and take pictures and all that stuff. They showed some new, I guess, car maneuverability, if you want to call it that. They were grinding on rails and wall driving. Honestly, this looked pretty sick. This is something I would definitely like to play. We've had Mario Kart 8 for so long. Mario Kart just kind of felt f***ing stale at that point for me personally. This renewed my love for Mario Kart. This is very ambitious for them. I hope it works as advertised. I really do, because it looked pretty cool. And that's coming day and date with the release of the Switch. Then we got a look at Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which is kind of like, honestly, it looked like an interactive instruction manual / tech demo for the Switch 2. As you run around with your avatar in this miniature world that's built on top of the Switch or something like that. There are a whole bunch of terminals that talk about different aspects of the Switch and the Joy-Cons themselves, and it really dives into like the engineering of the system, which is actually really cool. Like, whether you're trying to just learn how to use a system or really just into the technical aspect of how they made this damn thing, that's really, really cool. And there's also, like I said, a whole bunch of different tech demos to get you accustomed to the controls and whatnot. That was cool. This whole thing was cool. The downside, which is probably one of the first few negatives we got in this presentation, is that this is a paid for digital download. Normally, this is some that would be packed in with the system. Nintendo said, F all that noise. Nah, you paying for this. That threw me all the way out. Why would you do that? That one doesn't make sense to me. I don't know who would really buy that in the first place. That makes my brain hurt a little bit. Who made that decision? Why would you make someone buy something to help them understand how the system works, for one? And two, if they had to buy something to make them understand how the system works, they just wouldn't buy it. 9 times out of 10, I don't know. Maybe I'm the crazy one. I don't know. Anyway, this kind of ties back into the hardware a little bit, but we gotta look at the game cards for the Switch 2. They're the same card, they're just red. There's also a new Pro Controller, which honestly looks kind of beefier than the one that came with the Switch. There are also new back buttons, the GR and GL buttons that you can assign different functions to if you like, as well as there's an audio jack, and of course it has a C button on there. I hope this feels substantial as opposed to the one we kind of currently have, because if we're gonna be paying more money for this controller, then I would like it to feel worth the money. You know, that's one of my complaints with the Switch Pro Controller, is that it feels like a f***ing toy. I want this thing to have some kind of heft to it so it feels, you know, substantial in my hand. And then they switch gears a little bit to talk about how Switch games will have Switch 2 editions now. So they'll add features like mouse control, audio recognition, and then like smoother frame rates on top of higher resolution. Like Zelda is a big one that's gonna benefit greatly from a Switch 2 edition. Kirby Forgotten Land is getting a story add-on in the Switch 2 edition. Metroid Prime 4 was shown off, and it's gonna get mouse controls, as well as run at 4K 60 and have HDR. I'm like, what the f? Excuse me, first of all, I'm assuming that's 4K upscaled. That's not native 4K, it can't be. If it is, holy shit, but no. And then 1080p 120, which honestly, that in itself is really, really good. Metroid Prime 4 is looking to be one of those games that you want to buy a Switch 2 for. It really is. But again, with the positives in this presentation, there's another negative. All these Switch 2 editions are not free. If you own the game already, you're going to have to buy an upgrade pack to the Switch 2 edition, which isn't something we haven't seen before. I mean, PlayStation's been doing the same thing. They have been $10 upgrades, which doesn't hurt a lot in the grand scheme of things, but looking at how this pricing has gone with the Switch, which we'll get to, this is kind of a point of concern, or it can be. Moving on, Dragon Drive was a game that specifically show off the mouse controllers for the Switch 2. It is leave it to Nintendo to make a whole game based on wheelchair basketball. I don't know if there's an official name for that, but you know what I mean. And to be honest, it looked rough, but it also looked kind of sick. They were pulling off trick shots and everything, and the fact that I have never known of a wheelchair basketball game kind of made me interested. My only concern with this, and honestly any of the other mouse control games, is how many people that own this or will own this actually play a Switch at a table or a desk, because that's what's necessary to use these mouse controls. Unless you can play on your leg or something, which I doubt will be very comfortable for very long. Yeah, you're gonna have to be at a desk. And aside from, you know, people like me, because of, you know, this, where we have all of our stuff set up at desk, I don't know who really plays a Switch at a desk or table. And even then, if you're a kid, are your parents gonna let you scratch up their table to be playing with Switch mouses? I don't think so. My parents would not.
What did I tell you about scratching up my table with these f***ing video games? The last time I tell your ass.
They also announced a lot of third-party support for the Nintendo Switch 2. To be honest, like, if you can think of it, it's probably going to Switch 2. Just some mentions. Elden Ring, a lot of people kind of saw that coming. You know, it's kind of one of the biggest games out, so it kind of needs to be there. Hades 2, Street Fighter 6 is coming. That was a big one. And they're getting amiibo, so that's a real plus. Daemon X Machina looked freaking sick. I had never heard or seen of that game before. It was like an exosuit mech game, high-paced action. Yeah, that's something that caught my attention. Split Fiction's coming. Hogwarts Legacy is coming. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 is coming. And there's a Bikini Bottom level of all things being added to this thing. Okay, all right, cool, man. Sure, skateboarding underwater, that makes sense. Hitman, and then on top of that, they're working on a new 007 game. So that's going to be pretty cool. Can't wait to see what that turns into. Bravely Default Remaster is coming. That was somewhat of a surprise to me, and it's good to have that now because that game has been locked on the DS since it came out, I believe. I don't believe you could get it anywhere else. So that being re-released is a giant win for all of us JRPG fans out there. There's a new Hyrule Warriors that takes place in the time before that leads up to Tears of the Kingdom. So Zelda's whole story in that game is the premise for this Hyrule Warriors game called Age of Imprisonment. Deltarune, Civ 7, Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Apparently Wild Hearts is still a thing. I guess I had no idea that was still around. Star Wars Outlaws, shockingly. If I had to pick a Star Wars game, I would have picked Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order for that matter, but hey, who knows what the deals were. New Professor Layton kind of just snuck in there, as well as Hollow Knight Silksong was snuck in there. They just they just threw that in a sizzle reel and were like, here you go. And then we got Borderlands 4 coming to Switch too. And there is absolutely nothing else that happened during that. It was just Borderlands 4 and that was it. Nothing else to speak about. And then we got the announcement that GameCube classics are coming to the Switch Online expansion pack, which, yo, the sucky part of this is that it's Switch 2 only. So unfortunately, if you have a Switch, a regular Switch, you can't play this stuff. That sucks, because I was like, man, maybe I need to get the expansion pass, bruh. But they showed off a couple of things. OG Wind Waker Soul Calibur 2 is finally coming back, so we can get the version that has Link without having to, use alleged links or alleged methods. F-Zero GX, and as well as there's online multiplayer. And they also showed a panel of other games. Pokemon XD. I know that's probably not a lot of people's favorites, but it's one of mine, so I noticed that one right away. Strikers was on there as well, so a lot of good GameCube games are coming to Switch Online, as well as they're releasing a GameCube controller that works with the Switch 2. It even has a damn C button on top of it and everything, and it's wireless. Hopefully it's a good quality controller. That's the only concern with that. And then a couple of big games they wanted to show. Dust Bloods was probably the thing that blew everybody's mind. So this is another From Software game that is Switch 2 exclusive, no less. That's big. And essentially, it looks like it's a successor to Bloodborne, a spiritual successor at the very least, because the aesthetic runs pretty parallel to what Bloodborne had going on. It looks like it kind of deals with vampires in a way, sort of, kind of. I'm not sure. I don't know. The dude ate somebody at some point, so that kind of shouted vampire to me, as well as his hand had some kind of bite or piercing in it. I don't know. I probably won't understand until there's a lore video made about this game several months after the fact. But this is coming 2026. And it's just funny how it took Nintendo again to bring back a dead franchise, it seems like. They did it with Bayonetta, and now they're kind of doing it with Bloodborne, essentially, even though it's not Bloodborne. But, the dude has a gun and he shot it, all right? What other From Software game have you had a gun aside from Armored Core? I'm just saying. We got another surprise. Kirby Air Riders. So Kirby Air Ride is getting a sequel called Kirby Air Riders. Everybody thought this dude was working on Smash Brothers for the Switch 2. Everybody thought it was coming to the Switch 2. Nah, bruh. This dude Sakurai said, F y'all, I'm gonna do what I want. Y'all getting Kirby Air Ride 2, okay? So yeah, it was announced that he's directing Kirby Air Riders. He even got his own damn splash page. That lets you know that he's that guy, because he had a whole page just to have his name on it. That's looking to release later this year at some point. And then lastly, they showed off Donkey Kong Bonanza. Donkey Kong is very, very pissed in this game. It is a new action adventure game, they said. They didn't say platformer, I don't think. So it's a new action adventure game where you basically can destroy damn near the whole stage if you want to. Go underground. There's a whole underground level to each of these places. Yeah, very, very destruction. Almost think about, if you remembered Red Faction Guerrilla, it kind of reminded me of that, but a lot more destruction. And on top of that, Donkey Kong is looking a lot more gruff. His fur is definitely not as fine as it used to be. The mods have really f***ed his shit up, but that's releasing July 17th. So not too far off from the release of the Switch. That's coming really, really soon. And then they ended with the Switch 2 release date, which is June 5th, 2025. I don't know exactly where I thought it was gonna land, but I didn't think it would be like in the summer like that. But not mad at it, not mad at it. Sooner the better, I guess. Yeah, and that was the end of the presentation. Notice how I didn't mention a price in that whole thing yet. That's because they didn't either. They mentioned no price in that presentation for anything whatsoever. And I feel like it was for a reason, because they know if they mention these prices that I'm about to tell you right now, they would have gotten probably a lot more backlash, if not more than what they're getting now. So on Nintendo's website, you can find the Switch 2 retailing at $449 US. That's a bit high. Yes, that's a bit high. But to be honest, I'm not surprised at that price at all. I thought maybe the lowest they go is like 400, if that. But to be honest, I could have saw them going for $500 on the system, just because how much of an upgrade over the Switch that all the leaks and all the discussion kind of led this to be. I kind of saw it as like, if they're going to do all that stuff, there's no way it can be as cheap as the Switch was. And then on top of that, for the US specifically, you have all this talk of tariffs and trade wars and shit. So like that could play a part in it too, in terms of how this price is going. Granted, this, like I said, this is the MSRP. So there's no telling if stores are gonna up the price even further than what it is now. I mean, I'm pretty sure they will, but I don't know if this is an effort on Nintendo's part to try and, just put that upcharge just directly into the MSRP. I have no idea. And then on top of that, there's a bundle with Mario Kart World for $500. That's kind of, standard bundling deals. So the system price doesn't surprise me. The shocking part for me is that it has been found out that the digital version of Mario Kart World is going to go for $80 and possibly the physical edition going for $90. But for right now, we're just going to focus on the digital ones because that's the one that we've actually seen. I was not expecting the game to be $80. That I don't think anybody was. I think we were all kind of just used to everything being standard to like $60 to $70, depending on quality the game is. 80 is pushing it, bro. And that's just for Mario Kart. I think Donkey Kong has been listed for 70, which, okay, I mean, other games are going for 70, so sure. As it's still expensive as but sure. But to just jump up to 80 from the 60 that y'all were at, holy shit, bro. Like, that's kind of scary. And you can't really blame any kind of trade war / tariffs on that, because that's digital. You're not sending that through any kind of check or customs, whatever. That's just straight to end user and without any type of packaging / distribution. So that's $80 just for the game, bro. What the like that right there? That's why they didn't mention anything about a damn price in that presentation, because they knew that would have got everybody up in arms and has got everybody up in arms. Like, if they're gonna pull that off, it's looking like the start of, not even a start, but I guess it's looking like the end of game pricing standardization. Not that it was like an actual thing. It was kind of more of like a culturally / industry accepted thing that games are gonna be this price. It went from like 50 to 60 to $70 now. But if they're gonna bounce around prices like that for their first party no less, then I don't know. I mean, maybe we could be looking too far into this or too much into this, but that's not a good sign at the very start. I know a lot of us, I say a lot of us, but quite a few of us, me included, weren't born early enough to know what game pricing was before it kind of became standardized. Because to those of you that were there, this isn't anything new. It's kind of like full circle moment, honestly, which sucks. Game prices were pretty fucking stupid, and the value of the dollar has just gone down since then. We've kind of been spoiled by the fact that games became standardized because more competitors came in, PlayStation and Xbox mainly, to disrupt the system and came in with cheaper game prices, and Nintendo kind of had to play along, and that set the standard for how game pricing was for over a decade and a half. And now the fact that they're trying to go back to their old ways is kind of like, whoa, bro, what the hell? Excuse me? We ain't in this economy? What the hell are we? Everything was cool with this presentation, with this showcase, up until after the fact and news came out. I was honestly all for upgrading to a Switch 2 because a lot of the games look cool. And if they're going to be Switch 2 exclusive, I kind of want to do it. Like, this presentation did a good job of making me want a Switch 2. It really did. But if I'm going to pay that much for a game every single time, no. Like, that is way too much to be trying to spend on the game. With that pricing, gaming is becoming a rich man's hobby. I don't really want to say rich man's hobby, but definitely a more premium level hobby than what it used to be. Like, if I had to ask my parents back in the day to do this, they wasn't doing that. They weren't doing that. Like, maybe once a year, but they're not doing it on a regular basis. Definitely not. So that's kind of the sad part to this. And even to backtrack a little bit, the game upgrade things for the Switch 2 editions, it makes you wonder how much those are going to cost as well, because Switch 2 games cost $80. I mean, I guess if you look at the Switch games, they were $60 mostly, I think. So $20, maybe $30. Yeah, so this whole thing is kind of just marred with just weird decision making and weird pricing structure. Again, like, take all the pricing out of it, and this presentation was fire, bro. Like, pre-order, maybe not pre-order, but you know, as soon as I get a Switch 2, I would have done it, you know, responsibly, of course. But now I'm just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that on a regular basis, you know? Like, paying $70 already sucks as it is, and then you want me to pay more. And the fact that Nintendo games don't ever go on sale, so even if I couldn't even get them cheaper if I wanted to, unless I bought a physical copy used, which is an option, but I don't know. It's the shadiness of wanting to try and hide all this stuff from being talked from the presentation kind of shows that they were either, you know, they knew that this was going to rub people the wrong way, or they were just kind of being arrogant and going to be like, well, y'all are going to buy it anyway, so like, what does the price matter? I could see that being a thing too. I'm curious to know what you thought of this whole thing. What do you think of the Switch 2 hardware and the games that are coming for it? Price aside, what do you think of like the system and the games themselves? And then what do you think of the pricing structure that Nintendo has, you know, put in front of our faces? That really put a downer on the hype for this system for me, honestly. I wasn't hyped for it at first, but this presentation kind of really got me going, and then they just shot it right back down at the very end. So I'm honestly kind of back to where I was initially, if we're being honest. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Switch 2. As always, I appreciate you for making it to the end of this video. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe, like, and share the video. It helps me out a lot. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. I'm Russ. I'll catch you in the next one. Later.